Hi, this is Doug Vogt from the Dihole Foundation. It's June 21st, 2021, and this is video series 4, part 6C. I'm going to be answering questions that people had on part 6 and 6B, and I'm going to cover the following sections for you. The difficulties in designing the door system and the variables involved such as the solar output and the water pressure that we have to engineer for, and that's why we need additional engineers. I'm going to answer some questions on the door system, answering some questions on the location where to go to survive this thing, answering questions that I've gotten that was before, during, and after the reversal. I'm going to answer questions on the corporate structure and who to save. Answering questions on survival in a cave for an extended period of time. That was always fun. And some philosophical questions. There's going to be 2 major discoveries in this, or proofs of it, and which I think you'll enjoy. It has to do with the sun and the moon. Okay, if this is the first time you've seen one of my lectures, then I suggest you first go see part 1 on the basic philosophy. That's covered in this book that was written in 2007, and the latest version, 2015. It's called The Theory of Multidimensional Reality. It's the world's first information theory of existence. Also try to watch series 4, that's the basic guts and proofs of that the sun does nova during the polar reversal, its time periods, what it does, and the evidence on the Earth, Moon, and Mars. I think you'll like it. This is, from the last video, this is roughly where we think the longitudes are going to be where that sun's going to nova. This is going to be high noon when it happens, off the coast of Africa. Could be off by at least 20 degrees or 15 degrees on both sides. When it happens, it could be, you're dealing with temperatures at least as high as 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This is, okay, the first thing we had to do is figure out the output of a nova. Now, scientists has observed literally thousands of these novas. Japanese have a paper which I showed, I don't know how many videos back, a small area of the sky, I think it was less than 2 degrees of the sky. It was like 10,000 novas they recorded over about half a year. So we had to figure out, and there is a ways of figuring out what the power curve of a nova is. We want to see how many days this thing really gives off a lot of energy. So, our sun is a G, classified G. There's G between there and there. So it's a mainstream star. Should be plenty of them to observe. Now this is important. This is how they judge the size of a star and how they classify it. We're G, which is a yellow sun, at least it used to be. Now, our sun has gotten more white, which is F, A, and the letters in between. Temperature goes from low of the infrared all up to the ultraviolet. So it starts with 2,500 degrees Kelvin all the way up to 30,000 degrees. We have a white sun, and we're about here, there. You'll enjoy it. Okay. This is a standard, diagram that all the astronomers use. Now, this is a table that was put together, and it was to show how the water temperature, called sea surface temperature, and the mean surface temperature of the Earth is in comparison to the sunspot maximums. Here it is, like that. This is the last Gleisberg cycle, which is key. And as you can see, The blue is the ocean sea surface temperature, has been going steadily up, even though sometimes the sunspot number is less, but it doesn't matter, it's going up. The green is the average surface temperature of the Earth. It has been climbing, as you can see very carefully. Even though this was the last sunspot cycle was down, it didn't matter, it was still going up. Now this should tell you immediately that just measuring the number of sunspots is not the whole picture of how much output our sun is putting out. Remember, it's the entire electromagnetic spectrum. So anyway, that's the key in the last Gleisberg, and I'm predicting that the next Gleisberg cycle in between September and December 2046 is when our sun is going to nova. That's the clock cycle. That's the reason why they nova, and the ice age happens immediately after, is because of a clock cycle. It has nothing to do with comets and meteors hitting the Earth or anything like that. This is what this guy's table, what his table is. He went through 93 novas, and what this is the time it erupted or exploded, and this is the time of the peak, and this is how his table, he's got 93 of these. What's interesting in what they were doing, they left out G, what would have been the classification of our own sun. They left that one out. So here is some examples of an F class. Now, our sun is probably from G to F, and because it's getting whiter and whiter. So this is the graph of, this is the name of the star here. You can't see them, like this is V2295. And these are all different stars, and he put it in his graph. This is the output, and this is the number of days after the explosion. He calls it an explosion. That's what it really is. This is day one, and it's 10, 100, 1,000. And you can see for the first 10 days or so, here it's as much as 100 days, 200 days, and then it starts dropping off. For these stars, it was about 200 to 100 days it starts dropping off. Here's another one where you got an F-class star like this, and then drops off a little bit. There's a C-class and J-class, but they start dropping off within about 50 to 100 days, they drop off. This one was interesting. It says dust dip. And I think what that meant is, this is V838 when it novaed 2002. And you can see the dust shell provides the light that we see. But as this dust shell gets larger and larger, the light decreases, but the output's still about the same. There's the star in the center. It didn't become a black hole or a neutron star like their theory says, which is obviously wrong. Here's some more. There's a D class. This is probably the realm of which our star is. And it looks like after 100 days, it kind of drops off. Slowly drops off, but it stays pretty active for quite a long time. I don't know why it dips like this. It's either we're not registering a certain energy output, they're still looking at the telescope and they're looking at the light output. And for some reason it goes up and then down again. Same pattern here for D class, more D class. Got 4 stars here and 4 stars there. Now this is interesting. These two graphs show right off the bat that the idea that our sun has an iron core in it and it's a bunch of random nuclear explosions going on in the center is full of nonsense. Here's a whole bunch of stars, 7 of them. And after the nova, what do you have? You got a bunch of cycles going on. And every single one, there's a different kind of cycle pattern. This shouldn't be if it was an iron core and it just blew its brains out. Same thing goes here, all of them. So in other words, Our model of the sun, what's taught in school, is wrong. It's blatantly wrong. But they've known it's been wrong since the 70s. There was a chronometer hidden deep in the sun. This is a journal article from Journal Nature, 1978. No support is found for the conventional view of the sunspot cycle, that there exists a large random walk in the phase of the cycle. Instead, both sunspots and the DH, solar terrestrial weather indicates, seem to be paced by an accurate clock inside the sun. The universe is the product of information. You're looking at various clock cycles, carrier waves that carry information. It goes up and down as it crosses an x-axis. It gives off energy, and that's what you were looking at. A sunspot cycle is 11.09 years. 8 of them is a Gleinsberg cycle, 88.73 times 136. You get the magic number, 12,068. There's your clock cycle. The standard physics model calls for the sun producing at least 5.8 neutrinos per day, but none had been found, which is a very big problem for nuclear physics. Dr. John Bahal concluded, quote, the conflict between observed and standard theory has led many to speculate about the solar interior that we've advanced because their proponents believe that the subject is in a state of crisis. And 1976. In other words, they knew in the 70s our model of the sun is not correct and that it could nova. And remember the executive order that Nixon did, 11-490, and I think he basically gave the job to the CIA to basically keep it quiet and keep it secret that our sun does nova. Last video, I calculated how much calories of heat it would take to evaporate 450 cubic meters of ocean water. Came out to about 86 trillion calories. That converts out to a temperature of 189 million degrees Celsius, a little warm. And if you remember, I go through different stages of how many days or weeks after to see, I knew you're not getting all of it at once. And by the graphs I showed you, it's spread out over a period of time. So it's pretty obviously something else is going on here. We just didn't know how much time. And the reason we need to know that is we want to know how many days or weeks or months are we going to deal with a lot of heat outside so we know what kind of insulation should be on that door. It looks like no matter where you are in the world, you're going to get heat, a lot of heat. So it looks like those silicon carbide plates or panels that they used on the space shuttle are probably the best way of doing it. Here after 98 days, it starts getting cool, and so that's what that graph started showing also, that it does slow temperature reduce after about that period of time. Here's a graph. Here is the date of the nova that they saw, and then the different types of stars, and each one had a different graph of how many days before it started calming down. But what's interesting here, it tells us that the star starts increasing its light from a week to about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before the actual nova. Certainly count on about 2 weeks. I wanted to add something here also. Previous videos, a couple of videos back, I mentioned that I remember the sun when it was yellow, and it's certainly much more white now. And the other geologists that are roughly my age and a little bit younger also remember the same thing also. On the 16th, suspicious zero observers had a disaster video. And they were trying to say that the reason for the color of the sun changing from yellow to white was due to some reason Earth's magnetic field was changing and somehow had to do with helium. but never explained why. In other words, when you're looking at the sun and it turned white, it's because of the Earth's magnetic field. It has nothing to do with the color of the sun. In other words, don't look there. By the way, I looked it up. Helium is a colorless gas. It has nothing to do with what we see in the sun. The sun is turning more white because, as this video shows here, the output has been increasing. That's the problem. It has nothing to do with the Earth's magnetic field. That happens the same time that the sun's output increases. So don't think that's the case. But by the way, this is exactly what the CIA wants you to think. In other words, don't look at the sun. It's nothing. Ignore it. Like the Wizard of Oz, don't look at the guy behind the screen, you know. What he did is, when he was mentioning it, it's about 3 minutes into the thing. It's akin to really technobabble. It's a term used in the movie industry when they want to say something technical, a bunch of technobabble to confuse people, or, gee, it sounds nice, I don't know what it means, who cares? Anyway, that's it. But now you know the truth. It's gone white because its output is increasing. This is the section on the pressure. This is, you have this many feet of ocean water over you. This is what the PSI is, pounds per square inch you're dealing with. Now, the sampling I took is 500, 1,000, and 1,500. This is a concept drawing by one of the engineers. A round ball can take pressure better than almost anything else. The problem is this thing would have to be, he had spec'd it out at 18 feet in diameter. I said, you probably only need about 12 feet in diameter for the thing. But it would be assembled in pieces and assembled on site. The other problem with the design is this tube would have to be metal so this thing could fit into it. And it would have to be a steel tube, a large steel tube. The problem is it has to be assembled or put together there. So you have sections of 12-foot diameter steel, pretty heavy stuff, has to be inserted into this cave entrance. This is not an easy thing, and then welded. So, but that's one concept. This is one I drew. The black line here is the extent of which the cave would be carved or drilled out of. The pink area is the concrete, which is really going to be a polymer. And I made two doors, one a small door of 22 inches by 3 feet. The larger one is 8 feet by 7 feet. Thickness is 2.5 feet, and it would be embedded into the granite or whatever the material is, shale, by at least 3 feet into the rock around it. So the door would be about 2 feet thick. Just a drawing to get the engineers thinking in a certain direction. The advantage over a flat door than the rounded ones or convex ones is when you're trying to apply those heat tiles, it's easier to do it on a flat surface than a curved surface. And it's obviously from the graphs you saw on the output of the sun, of a star, it's a lot of energy. So it's going to be spread over at least 100 days, 80 days, we don't know, but it looks like it's spread out. So the whole world is going to get the evaporation treatment. This is steel girders in here, riveted, not welded, in the concrete. Okay, these are the problems we have to deal with when it comes to where these things are built, how high they are, and how close you are to the western shore where an ocean is. On the small door of 22 inches by 36, this is how many square feet it is, square inches rather, 792, times the PSI gives you, that door is going to have to take 191.6 pounds of pressure on that entire door. The larger door is going to take 1.9 million pounds of pressure. Now, when the ocean comes over it, and it may only be for a day or 2 days until it all washes away. So depending on the elevation and how close you are to the ocean, it might be less than that, but it's somewhat workable. When you get to 1,000 feet of ocean water, it gets pretty substantial. To 383 pounds on that one small door, and 3.89 million pounds on the bigger door, and 1,500 feet of ocean water. This is what the numbers are. You can see it. As I say, read it and weep. But I'm confident you'll see in a second that we can overcome that pressure with using a polymer and the design of the door and how it's put together. One of the members of one of the engineers, his name is Steve, and he's the inventor of a geopolymer. And he says he's gotten the geopolymer at 24,000 and even 36,000 psi, 20,000, 16,000. And that would make life a lot easier for all of us, including the engineers in designing the door, if you had a polymer that was able to take that kind of pressure, besides 2 layers of rebar and the I-beams inside, it would take that pressure then. But it's all in engineering. That's why we need engineers. If you're an engineer, contact me at research@Diehole Foundation, and let's talk. This is the testing he had in England of his concrete. So we need it again. What we're going to do is the foundation is going to pay for it. The testing lab here in the United States, they want a cylinder that's 6 inches in diameter and 12 inches long, a foot long. And they need 4 for each batch. So he wants to do 4 different chemical formulas or 4 different batches. So if you're going to contribute, please, your contribution will be used to pay the lab to test for the concrete, which in turn makes making the door a lot easier. This is the problem for the pressure and why I had to show you the variables here. This is off Central America. You got 12,000 feet of ocean water here, plus it's like about 9,000 miles to the Orient from here. So you get a lot of mass coming towards you real fast. But the elevations are not that great, so you're going to have maybe 1,000 or 2,000 feet of ocean water rushing over you, even if you're in a mountain. Northern South America, same thing. Not that tall, but you've got like 1,800, almost 2,000 miles of going across here. But again, you're at 9,000 miles of ocean water. It's a lot of mass. You're not going to stop it. It's going to go right across. So we have to deal with the water pressure, but only maybe for a day or 2 days until it washes out. Further South America, Brazil, not that tall, the mountain ranges. Here the problem is it's high, but you're near, this is going to be massive earthquakes along here, and a lot of water. And also, if you build higher up, the problem is how do you get the equipment to build these things? Now I'm going to show you, I'm going to go into that next so you understand that next variable. So before you say, okay, I want to build it on the side of a huge mountain or hill, how are you going to make the cave? Here's Africa, same thing. Very deep water, basically 3 miles of water. And pretty shallow. I mean, the mountains and plains are not that high. They're going to have maybe at least 2,000 feet of ocean water rushing over them, if they're lucky. Same thing here, about the highest point here, but you're pretty close to the Atlantic Ocean. 16,000 feet of ocean water is a lot of water. Even if only it gets to like 2,000 or 3,000 feet is rushing over you, it's still a lot of water pressure. Southern part of Africa below the equator, same thing here, not that tall. I mean, a little better here and there, but still, I mean, you have decent chances here. You would, and maybe even here. This is where we think the sun's going to Novus here. Now, its worst part is probably going to be as it drags across the Indian Ocean even across the Pacific Ocean. It's going to get a lot of heat and a lot of evaporation. Australia, India, not that tall. I mean, 1,000 feet there, 1,000 feet there, 3,900 feet there. See, it's not that great. Australia was 2,600 feet, but look how close you are, and it's to 19,000. It's over 3 miles of water, and it's 4,900 miles of ocean water coming towards you. It's a lot. So some places are going to have the water over them maybe for 2 days. Some places only a day, day and a half. It'll take probably, for all the water to drain off, probably figure a week, 6 to 7 days. Now, the mechanics of actually building a cave. This is actually a mountain range in eastern Brazil, somewhat near the coast. And this is a igneous rock, probably an ancient volcano stack or chimney. You could build a road along here, no problem. You're not starting the cave up there. You'll see why in a second. You could start it here. You could start it in this valley over here, no problem. This is the equipment you actually need to create a cave system that'll hold 1,600 people to 2,000 people. You need a drilling machine, a driller. The drill's up here, and it drills a bunch of holes. This is hard rock mining. Drills holes here. The holes are numbered. Then they put dynamite in it, and they blow it. This is what a smaller drilling machine. There's the drill itself. This is what a drill looks like. And it drills a shaft into the rock. Then they put dynamite in it. They wire it all up, and then they blow it. Then you have to bring in a scraper or scaler. It scrapes off the stuff in the ceiling that may be loose so it doesn't fall on your head and kill you. Notice, this isn't toys. These are big machines. This is how you actually have to make a mine entrance. Now, after everything's been blown up and scaled off the ceiling, a skip loader comes in like this. This is by Caterpillar. There's like about 10 or so major manufacturers in Japan, Germany, the United States that makes this kind of equipment. And it takes it and hauls it out. Now, sometimes they have to haul it to a truck, and that truck brings it to the entrance, and you dump it. The other way is a conveyor belt. And this is most likely, it looks like a salt mine. And they don't have to use the blasting. They have a different kind of way of cutting into a mountain. You'll see it in a second. It's really cool. But you notice, pretty straight edges, straight ceiling. They have to put rock bolts in to keep the ceiling up there. But that's a conveyor belt. It runs for about maybe 200 feet, 300 feet. And it takes all the stuff that it had blown up or hauled out, and it takes it to the outside of the cave. But see, all this stuff is very big equipment. This is the other things that makes these marks on the walls and ceilings. That cutter there, I'll show you a better picture in a second. Cuts here, drops down here, and comes through, from here, drops into that conveyor belt you saw. But notice, nice square walls. If you could find material like this, it wouldn't be granite or igneous rock. That would be too hard. You got to dynamite then. But other softer material, as you go into the mountain, you could use a machine like this, and it cuts it and does it pretty quickly. But when it's this big and this like this, you can actually get the prefab shipping containers, the 20 and 40-foot shipping containers. You prefab them someplace else, and you bring them here, and you set them in place. That would be a neat way of doing it. This is a better view of what they look like. These are carbide teeth, rotates and it grinds away. In this case, it's salt, I'm sure. This looks like salt. And that's it. That's how they work. But you can see, you can't drag that to the top of a mountain or on the side of a steep cliff. You could get maybe 10 degrees or so up a hill, but that's about it. And after that, you have to start in drilling. Okay, these are the questions now before, during, and after the reversal. So Doug, how did we get all the extremely different races from a handful of survivors in the last 12,000 years? Good question. Now, obviously, a lot of different races made it all over the world. Now, the ones that went to Africa, I think, were told to go near the equator, when less chance of the Ice Age. And then as the snow and the ice started melting, they went back to where they came from. And I'm sure some made it, I know they made it in Australia, I know they made it in Southeast Asia and India. And I think China also. Could all the humans that survived have been in Africa? No, like I mentioned, I think some went there with the knowledge of they're going to stay there temporarily, and then they left and went back to where they originally came from. If these cycles have been occurring for time immemorial, then it's impossible for us to be the first. Not only that, but there must have been a structure or location that has enabled the human race to exist this far into the cycle. Have you considered this? Yeah, I did. I'll answer in a second. Also, do you ever question how the first humans survived? What intelligence saved the human race long before we could save ourselves? Everybody here that's watching me and everybody on the planet is the result of a man and a woman, no third choices, who survived the last cataclysm, and every one before it, until man, and I do believe, whatever civilization was on Mars, because there's pyramids there, and there was obviously evidence of ocean water, which I show in one of the parts in Series 4. They came here when our planet was too far away from the sun, lost too much of the water, as you could see, and they immigrated and came to the Earth. Like one day we will have to go to Venus when we get pushed too far away from the sun. So, to answer your question, the primitive people were probably told, that's why they found earthen mounds literally all over the world, and caves also, and I'll cover some of the stuff. Mostly, the only thing we really have for sure from these survivors is these legends and mythologies, some incorporated in their religions. And I'll cover those in the next video, which I'll do. It'll be basically covering what was in chapter 11 of Reality Revealed, which I did like 44 years ago. God, time flies. Solar eclipse appearance as a white wall tire. Can you elaborate, please, on why and when? In my first book, Reality Revealed, which I'll show you the quote, I said as we get closer to the reversal, the sun's energy will increase, its output will increase, and the size of the sun, I estimated, would start increasing, would expand. We have two things going on here. The sun creates matter. There's a center modulation point in the center, using the theory of multidimensional reality. It's the only way to explain this. But you have gravity, which is information being directed to that point in time and space. So gravity pushes it in. The energy that's being created in the center of this star pushes out. But eventually this energy gets greater and greater, and the gravity is not great enough to compact it, so it keeps expanding. I was lucky enough to find a photo, the first picture of an eclipse, July of 1851. You see the moon covers the sun perfectly. How do you like that? This is August 21, 1914. This is called the World War One Eclipse. Ironically, the dark area went right through Eastern Europe, Ukraine, Belarus, Eastern Poland, right through it. Interesting. So it covered it perfectly. Here's 1914 again, and Eddington's 1919 eclipse. This is a famous one. Eddington was a famous British mathematician and astronomer, physicist, and they wanted to see if Einstein's general theory of relativity was correct. So they measured one of the stars very accurately before the eclipse. Then at the time of the eclipse, they wanted to see if the light from the star bent, and it did. So that photo is very, very important. But again, it shows, for our purposes, the sun, the moon covering the sun perfectly. Also notice a little bit of an eruption going on there. Okay, now we go ahead in time. Here's a World War One eclipse. Here's the eclipse of 2012. Gee, what do you see that's different? 1914, 2017. Wow, that gets interesting, doesn't it? 1914, 2017, taken from South America. You can clearly see the edge of the sun is larger than the moon. How do you like that? 1914, 2019, December, United Arab Emirates, taken from there. Gee, that does begin to look like a white sidewall tire, doesn't it? Here's another in December of 2019. This was taken, I think, in Georgia, where we had that eclipse. So, interesting? So, here's my quote from Chapter 6, 1977, page 185. As the time draws closer to the reversal, the sun will gradually expand. At some point during one of the solar eclipses, the moon would no longer cover the sun. From that point, at that time on, there would no longer be a total eclipse of the sun. No matter how primitive the civilization is at the time, I include ourselves, even they would begin to realize that something very wrong is about to happen. So, now you know who's been telling you the truth and who's been lying to you. Now, NASA, they take a picture of the eclipse, not from the ground. They take it from 40 or 50,000 feet, whatever they can get, how far up they can get that plane to go to take the picture, so they're closer to the moon and therefore it looks bigger. By the way, this is the credit of who asked the question, in case you're wondering. Seems like the best place to be during the event is on the dark side of the moon. By the way, I got the same line about being either on the moon or Antarctica from that Army officer who wrote to me. Isn't that interesting? So they must have been thinking about that. The problem with it is this. This is supposedly the path of the eclipse in 2046. It doesn't cover very much area, and it's only for a few minutes that you have totality in one little tiny area. So what is it going to protect? This person. Now, let's move to the moon, which you have conveniently forgotten to take into account. My dreams say the moon acts as a protective device for Earth. It shelters the Earth from the worst parts of the nova. Either he doesn't know about what an eclipse is and how fast it takes, how little time it really is on the planet, the shadow. But this should answer his question and everybody else's about that. He's not the only one who's asked that question. This is about government and stuff like that. This is the questions before the reversal. Doug, if you decide to help the government and the elites that seek to hide this reversal from the masses, then they will not allow you to help anyone but those they deem necessary. That's the plan the CIA and the government actually has. I'm not. I mean, I'm giving these videos for free on YouTube, warning you and what to do and how to build it and where to go. There isn't anybody else doing this. Nobody. By the way, the Dihel Foundation, unlike all the others on YouTube, is a public nonprofit science foundation. You can go on the IRS And go look at our tax return, Form 990, which I filled out a couple of months ago and filed it. So we're a public nonprofit foundation. All the rest, that money you give, goes in their pocket. Government doesn't really care what happens to their populations. The people in the know control virtually all the governments and are only trying to secure the survival of themselves and their select. That's probably true. If you're a bureaucrat or a politician watching this, this gives you an idea, small sampling, I've got hundreds like this, how much they hate your guts, how much they distrust you. Now, the people know the game you're playing. You can't hide it from them. Shouldn't you have already started these preparations many years ago? And 2007 is like 37 or so years ago. That's when I figured out the drop dead date. And I didn't have the drop dead date beforehand. And yeah, but I'm only one person, and I had to make a living just like the rest of you. So only when I was able to do these videos starting in March of 2018, we're able to get this stuff out. But you look at how many videos I put out there, it's like 50. I had to do that many to explain this thing. First the philosophy, then all the evidence. It takes time to do this. Could this be why they have caves in the Grand Canyon? Plenty of room for the water to disperse. You don't get a direct hit, and if you are far enough up the cliff, you won't drown. Well, several things. One, that cavern, the Grand Canyon, was created by a massive amount of ocean water grinding out and cutting out that thing. If you're in a cave in there, you're going to be dead. You're going to be drowned out dead. Two, if you're on the cliffside, how do you get any of that equipment there to go dig it? You're going to try to do it by yourself? You know, it's not going to work. You don't know what it takes to do hard rock mining. Now you have a little inkling of what it takes to do hard rock mining. This is not easy. If Russia knows what will happen to their country, what's to stop them from invading a country for survival? You're absolutely correct, Darlene. Here's Europe, Russia, China, Iran, Turkey, India, the rest of the Middle East. And yes, you're absolutely 100% correct. If they can't get deals of these African countries from here down, they probably will invade that and take them over. It's something for the African countries to realize that everybody's got to think differently. You have to realize this is a question of survival of the human race. This isn't your own personal desires of becoming, power and wealth and stuff like that. You're lucky if you're going to make this thing out alive. That's really what you're dealing with. You can't be selfish about this thing. This is the survival of the human race. Surviving this receptacle we call a body. Reversal questions. My biggest question is, why would or what would cause the Earth to stop and change rotation? Well, JD, these 3 videos explain it, and I'm obviously going to have to do another one, but I'm going to explain it on an atomic level and how the same program that deals with the atom also is the same program that's inside the center of a planet or a star. Besides, see all these canyons and stuff like that going on here? This is the 5-ton elephant in the room that they generally don't want to answer. This can't be created unless there's no ocean water there. The only way that can happen is if that ocean water went that way and evacuated, and the Pacific, this is the east coast of the United States, the Pacific came over the continent and drained that way. That's the only way it could happen. They can't explain that, so they say some statement like that. What if there's a crustal displacement during the big event? That's interesting. Well, this is from Hapgood's Earth Shifting Crust. It was done in 1958. That's before we knew about the continental plates. The Navy in the 1950s and 60s were doing many, hundreds of magnetic surveys of the transatlantic ridge, and the Pacific Ridge, and other places. They're mapping the ocean and its magnetic thing. The reason they did it was to identify and find submarines. That's why. But here's a journal article, which I want to repeat later. Our North and South Pole have not varied more than 5 degrees over the last 130 million years. This is from Earth and Planetary Science Letters, volume 184. That's it, 2001, long after this guy. So I kind of forgive him, but he should have thought this one out better. Assuming humans survive, their memories could be erased by a large electromagnetic field. They may even forget how to read or communicate with language. I don't know who's telling them this stuff, but it's just not true. You're not going to lose your memory, and you're not going to lose the ability to read and write. I don't know where people get these ideas. I've asked many people, when they come up with some weird idea, I say, who told you this stuff, or what's your reference? I never hear back from them. A bit off topic, but during a reversal, what if the entire top layer of the mantle shifts? Could liquefaction of the upper crust worldwide happen? It's actually a good question. I'm going to answer it in the next page, which I hadn't thought about the outer crust, or the outer mantle. Can anyone prove it's been 12,000 to 13,000 years since the last pole reversal? These 4, actually more than that, these 4 videos will basically answer your question. Series 1, 4, Part 1, 4, 4A, 4H. Now, all these are listed in the description area of all of my videos until I finally run out of room, then I have to remove some of them. So you go to those 4, and that will tell it to you. This is, again, more thing during the reversal. What does the moon do when the Earth's rotation reverses? Good question. As far as I know, it just keeps rotating the same places and stuff like that. And it does look like it's going to be a day after the full moon. If the Torah is right, the Torah gives an exact date of October 16, 2046. And it looks like it'll be almost a full moon. So maybe that's why it says in the prophet section of the Old Testament that the moon will turn red. So that would imply a full moon. What materials are best to stop radiation? Thank you. If you're in a cave, 1 or 2 or maybe 3 yards of granite and rock does it for you. If you're out in the open, I think it was 1 inch of lead or less will stop gamma rays. Cosmic rays a little bit more, but when you're in a cave, by the way, you'll find out from the next video on the mythologies, the only ones who really did survive it and write these legends were the ones who survived it in caves or mountains. How does the Earth reverse its rotation just because the sun Novus? Again, go back to the previous one. It's explained there. It has to do with how information comes into this dimension. Seems to be like the thin shell of the crust may stop, but the internals of the Earth will keep turning until the crust is released and then catches up with the magma again. He's partially right. What's causing the reversal or the rotation of the Earth has to do with the Earth's magnetic field that's being generated by a center modulation point, which creates a lot of voltage also. And he's right. This outer mantle, it's going to be somewhat liquid, but it's, we don't know how liquid because you never went very deep into the Earth to know how liquid it gets. But it will have a forward velocity still. The Earth rotates this way, it's going to keep going. And it's going to take time to slow down. Here's the crust that we live on, and we'll see this, basically the crust is probably moving because this is going to be still moving in the former direction. So that's why most of the mountain ranges have a north-south orientation. It's perpendicular to the line of force. I'm going to add something on this one too. In the CIA Garden of Eden story, as well as some people in their websites are saying that the Earth is going to do this. The Earth right now rotates like this. For some reason, they want to explain why this thing all of a sudden goes like this, or like that. Now, that's perpendicular to the direction of force. They don't explain what force is going to change the direction by 90 degrees. They say the North Pole is going to be by the equator. Yeah, what force is changing it? We're rotating like this. How come all of a sudden it's going to go like that? They never want to say that. One, I think in the Adam Eden story, they try to say that Greenland was really heavy and stuff like that, and somehow that's going to drag it down here. Now, I'll go into that a little later, why they found plants and tropical stuff in northern Siberia, Greenland, and northern Canada and the US. And it's not what you think. Not what they think either. Also Antarctica. Okay. Use a cargo ship because that's the amount of supplies that you'll need to establish a colony and survive the upcoming ice age. Like I said in the previous video, this is like a storm that's 60, 80 miles an hour and it creates waves like this. This wave was almost 100 feet high. Imagine if the wind is 200 and 300 and maybe 400 miles an hour when the air is going around the Earth to fill up the area of extremely low atmospheric pressure. You're going to have waves at like 200, 300 feet high, maybe. But your cargo ship's not going to survive. It'd probably break in two and capsize. And these ships, once they capsize, they're not righting themselves. I think a lot of people don't think this thing out, or they haven't seen all the videos to understand the scope of what really happens. How about a boat or ark? I understand that worked the last time. Same thing. I mean, you can see it here. Okay, it will be much easier to survive a micronova on Mars or the Moon. No atmosphere. Number one, there is no such thing as a micronova. 86 trillion calories of heat evaporate 450 feet or meters of ocean water. I got news for you. That's a nova. Anyway, Mars and the Moon. Two problems with it. One, this is actually a picture on Mars, and this is sedimentary material here because there was once an ocean here. If there's water there, we don't know where it is. They think it's under the ground, but you're too far away to grow anything. You're not going to survive there. You have to bring all your supplies there and pack your bags and go back. So why would you want to be there? And also, once you have to go back, either on the Moon or Mars, the Earth is going to have a big cloud cover. Where are you going to land? You don't even know. The Earth is going to be rotating the other direction. Tremendous amount of cloud cover. You could land in the middle of the Pacific or Atlantic Oceans and not know it. And it's going to be white, maybe snow if it's far enough north or south. And where do you go? You won't know where to go. There's no GPS at the time, you know. I've been thinking about Elon Musk, who is planning to establish a base on Mars and the Moon for saving humanity. That's a key word here. If he's doing that, he knows something. He said there has always been cataclysms and ice ages, and it will happen again. Elon Musk is taking the same position that Howard Hughes did with the CIA. Elon Musk has a rocket company, SpaceX, which launches satellites for the military. And he also has a hard rock drilling company. It makes these big machines to drill holes in mountains. Guess who his main customer is? How about the Ozarks and Arkansas? No, it'll be fine in 200 to 300 years after the nova. The ice and snow should melt by then. You can go back to your house if you could find it. Otherwise, don't do it. Regarding Antarctica, plant life, could that be because the poles were in a different position? Okay, I found a paper where some geologists had found in Antarctica tree roots of conifers, they think 280 million years old. Now, the age of this is really kind of guesswork, you know, intelligent guesswork, but it's guesswork. It's probably not that old. But this is what the Permian period looked like. There's a period just before it where there's no plant life, no animal life, no water like this. And this is really the stage at what Venus is right now. Volcanoes, sulfuric acid for an upper atmosphere. That tells you it's volcanoes. Therefore, between that and this, so the question is why? Or why is there trees, conifer trees, both in Antarctica as well as Siberia, northern Canada, and northern Alaska? The reason is pretty simple. At one point, our Earth was a lot closer to the sun. After repeated novas, it gets pushed further and further away. It doesn't look like very much, maybe only 1,000 or 2,000 miles further out. Thank God for that. But as you're closer to the sun, don't you think this whole area around the midsection is going to get really hot? So hot that plant life couldn't even exist. If you're between, let me go back to, between this and that, you know, as it's transitioning, this has got to cool down. But around most of the planet, it may be so damn hot, because you're so close to the sun, that the only place life can form, or plant life can form, is up here, is on the northern area, the poles. Now, at this particular time, there was Gondwana land, which is, this was part of Africa and South America. And they think it was someplace down here. There was one continent before it started breaking up. There was a lot more water on the planet. So, very plainly, that's the reason why they find the plant life in the north and south. It's because someplace in between this stage of the Earth and that stage, the only place you could have life in the form of plants is by the poles where you didn't have so much exposure to the sun. This is a cute name, so we don't need no stinking badges. Obviously, Clint Eastwood movie lover. How about building a bunch of submarines moored to the bottom of the ocean to hide the wave, to ride the wave? You know, he's right. And I've heard it before, and I thought about it also. You could do it with a submarine, not too far out, but if you're in like the Pacific, and you're down maybe about 500 or 1,000 feet to avoid the heat from above, you know, as the ocean water gets evaporated, if this ocean rushes this way, you want to be far enough away that you don't wind up in the Andes, or in this case in Africa here. So you'd be far enough away. Now, we just don't know the speed of what this ocean is going to go this way. If it's 400 miles an hour, you figure you got about 3,000 miles, 2,400 miles out, and then you'll be just at the coast here. But the Pacific, you have plenty of room here. The Atlantic, you don't have that much room. But you do have room here by the equator. So if you parked a bunch of submarines here, and I don't mean don't moor them, because if you tether them to the seafloor bed, not going to do any good. It's going to, when that water rushes that away, anything you've anchored it to is going to rip away. Why bother? Just let it sit there, not anchored at all, and then let it ride the wave and hope you don't get too banged up. And I don't think it's necessary to have the ICBMs on them anymore, but fill the ICBM tubes with food and other things, because you'll need that more than you'll need an ICBM. How do you have, this is now survival questions. How do you have enough food stored in a cave for 2,000 people to survive for 10 or 11 years? Well, we don't know how long it is before the sun is going to, all the clouds around the earth is going to be dissipated, and it's landed in the form of rain and snow, lots of snow. We don't know how long. As soon as that happens, you're going to start seeing a sun. It's not going to be the same sun. It's going to be cooler. It's going to be probably more red, and it'll produce some heat, but not the heat it did before. By the way, the legends say exactly the same thing. No difference. How are you going to survive if the sun won't be visible for 11 years? We don't know if it's going to be 11 years. It could be less. It could be more. It also depended on what part of the earth you're at. I think the equator may be a better place, but maybe NOAA will do their job and actually try to figure that one out. Maybe somebody will tell them. Okay, 3D printing air concrete bunkers, earth ships, boats. Caves will cave in during the long earthquakes. Rapid water pressure will be placed on top of a cave system, will most likely cause damage to the people, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Again, ships and boats and concrete bunkers above ground, it won't survive it. If it's on the surface of the ground, the wave will just wash it away. And boats and stuff like that, I already covered, it's just not going to work. Should the seismic forces be such that the plates are shifting, I would suspect that there will be micro cracks in the rock layers. It goes in the granite itself, or the other material itself. It doesn't really matter if there's micro cracks in it at all. One engineer suggested we plug up, when you finish the cave, you plug it up and you pressure test it and see if you'll lose pressure. Then you got a hole someplace. But actually, when you actually dig a cave or a mine, you could tell right off the bat if you've got an opening. It's not a question like hit or miss. It's not like you're in a cavern, you don't know where this thing ends. When you're building a cave or a mine from scratch, you already know you're in solid rock, the whole thing, or some kind of a material. So this isn't really much of an issue. Even, remember also, the ocean's only going to be over you maybe for a day to 2 or 3 days. That's it. Then it all drains out to the ocean. Survival in a cave question. Hi, Doug. Living in a cave system, it will be hard to replenish food, especially if it's almost impossible to go outside for a time. Hence, it wants to grow mushrooms and stuff like that. Now, all this would be another phase of the foundation, getting people who are food experts. And we've got a couple that have contacted us. What food to bring with you? Well, we're not going to deal with it right now. Let the experts on what kind of food to grow and bring back, to store it. Let them figure it out, not right now. Now add in all the equipment needed to survive, all the supplies needed to be laid in, armed guards to protect it from local encroachers, some type of entertainment as bored people or dangerous people. 2,000 people living together in an enclosed place are going to need literally tons of oxygen, and also going to need CO2 scrubbers for 10 plus years. I don't think it's going to be that long. It's mostly for the period of time that they're stuck in the cave until the water drains and the heat of the sun is diminished. It may be 100 days. We don't exactly know, but probably it looks like about 100 days. Sorry, I think you're going to need to include the older ones in your survival bunkers. They're the ones with the disposable funds to get this project off the ground. We are used to buying shares. Most youngsters are not. All true. I'm not saying only young people survive. You need people who know how to do things. The engineers, mechanics, people that make that mining equipment work, people who know how to drill oil wells and maintain them, etc. But that's for later. Right now, the concern is just the cave door and the location where you can build these things. I see a problem. I would never bring a child anywhere with the intention of eventually having sex with them. You need to work on that plan, man. Listen, I don't like the idea too. The issue is this. This is the creation, this is the saving of the human race. Women create people, but it takes them 9 months to do it. With that fact, you want to save more women than men. But you don't want all the women to be fertile and having kids at the same time. That's not going to work out too good for the guy because he has to provide food. And in the beginning, we don't know how much food you're going to need when you can start growing food outside. So that's why I staggered the ages. I don't like it, and I said in the video, you should only do this for one generation. After that, they're going to give birth to a boy and a girl and let them do their thing. I will add this though. I think the family unit should all be of the same race, and this is why. I don't care what race it is. We know that cosmic rays and gamma rays alter the DNA, and that's the thing that creates some variation of a species. We don't know if consciousness has something to do with it also. If you have mixed races in that family unit, then you may not be able to see a change. The scientists of the future have to know that. We should know what is causing the evolution of not just people, humans, but animals also. Is it consciousness with cosmic rays and gamma rays? What is it exactly? That's the reason why. This guy wants shepherds. Now, I think he's really getting to the point that you have people of different professions and stuff like that. And yes, the shepherds aren't going to do you any goods or animals until you can grow grass and wheat and barley outside. Once the sun has a little bit of sun coming out and not so many clouds, then you can grow grasses and then you can deal with the animals. Setting up what we have now is your answer, Doug. Come on, that is no good at all. Corporations is what America is today. Anyway, he doesn't like corporations. Let me explain something to those. We have to deal with the economic and legal structure we have today. In order to go to a country and you have 2,000 people plus maybe government providing funds to build a cave system, You're going to go to a foreign country, let's say Brazil. You have to wind up creating a corporation that represents the stockholders and investors of that corporation to do the work and contract with locals to do work, local contractors to bring their equipment if you don't bring your own. And also a corporation that has to buy the equipment from Caterpillar or one of the other manufacturers. That's just the way it is. I don't know why he thinks you can do any different. The reason I picked the corporate environment, and I said specifically, everybody just gets one share. You can vote once you're over 18, but only you get one share. So that's the parallel to one man, one vote. No one having more shares and basically bullying their way to the top. That way also, if you got some nutcase that's the president of the corporation or the leadership or board, the other people can vote them out. Real easy. They're out the door. Not literally, though. Philosophical questions. If God invented this system, why would this happen at all? Very strange God to have a planet that lets life build up for thousands of years and to just destroy it in one day. So many innocent beings. Pretty horrible. God, if you ask, pretty horrible God if you ask me. These videos here will answer your question. A small recap is this. We're in a created reality, whether we like it or not. I call it the die-hold. In essence, it's a computer. The operating system is what we call God. The operating system has no control of the hardware that was created, that got his program uploaded into it. He has to deal with this. That is why he lured Abraham to that cave. That is why he had Moses use those tablets and the 22 symbols as the very first alphabet. And the other videos show how he has manipulated things through time to basically give clues and help man figure this thing out. Hell, even in the Torah, he gives the exact number of years between reversals, the 12,068, and the exact date for us. How do you like that? Now, he has no control over that clock cycle. It's just going to happen. So don't blame him. It's a strange feeling to know in the future people will be desperately referring to this body of work to save humanity. Aaron, I think you're right, because I don't see anybody else doing this. And governments who are doing it want to save themselves. Anyway, as I said, it's a 501c3 foundation. We could use the money now for the testing and developing the concrete and also designs. Thank you for listening.